Hello YouTube, Dutch Bushcraft Knives here, and today I want to talk about I want to discuss the knife world and knife terminology a bit. I think this part of the hobby and part of the knowledge about knives is very vague, and I think a lot of people have wrong understandings or different understandings of different terms in the knife terminology. Like we all know the shape of the tips, like tanto or spear point, and we know our bevels, scanty edge, convex, full flat, flat. We know those. Those are facts. Well, there are a lot of things in knife terminology and in the knife world that really aren't facts, and people have completely different understandings about all those things. Yeah, there are a lot of things to think about, like edge, angles, measurement of sharpness, stuff like that. So yeah, where do I start? I think a common miscommunication when knife lovers talk to each other is the edge angle, because there are actually two different types of edge angle you can talk about, and that is the angle per side or the complete bevel, as I've drawn here. But this is a 30 degrees angle bevel. So the total bevel is 30 degrees, but some people talk about, and some knife companies talk about their per side angle, and that is 15 degrees. So this can be a big misunderstanding when you're talking about the angle of your knife, because when you say 15 degrees, well, you mean the one of the per side angle. Someone can understand that you're talking about the full angle of the complete bevel. 15 degrees is a very small or very low angle, while 30 degrees is a quite common angle to use in knives. So yeah, you can really miscommunicate there. So that's one thing that bothers me, because a lot of people misunderstand. I normally talk about the combined angle of the two bevels, so I'm always talking about this, the complete angle. But when you're talking about holding your edge to a sharpening stone, then you're talking about a per side angle, because you're doing this, so you're sharpening one side and you're creating the angle for one side. So when I'm sharpening and I say I hold my knife in a 12 degree angle, that means I'm making a 24 degree angle on this blade. So that's a little bit confusing, but yeah. Another thing, something that bothers me in this knife world is that you can't really talk about knives you don't like. So for example, if you say something bad about a knife that somebody else really likes, you always get a shitload of hate on that, and that's a shame, because when I want to buy a knife, I'd like to hear the good and the bad things about it. So yeah, I think it's because people really like their knife, and when somebody else says something bad about it, yeah, they go mad, and I don't really understand why. But yeah, that's something that bothers me in this knife world, is that you can't really say something bad about a knife a lot of people like, for example. Yeah, another thing is the sharpening of knives. As a lot of people think or have seen a tutorial about sharpening a knife, and they have always sharpened it like that, for example, and they think everything else they see is bad. But I think there are many ways to sharpen a knife. There are many ways to sharpen a knife by hand, but there are also many ways to sharpen your knife with machines. And you can really achieve very different results. Some guys like to put a V-edge or secondary V-edge on their blade. I really don't like that, but if it works for you, I'm not gonna be mad. But yeah, there are many ways to sharpen a knife, and it's about achieving the end result. And if you're happy with that result, that means the knife is good for you. Of course, when you're sharpening something for somebody else, you have to consider what they want. But yeah, I think there are many ways to sharpen a knife the proper way. Of course, there are also some methods that I don't agree on, like using a sharpening rod or something. But yeah, there are many ways to sharpen a knife the proper way. Another misunderstanding I hear a lot about in knife sharpening is that many people think that convex is the hardest grind to sharpen, and I often like to take sandpaper with a soft underground, so they really create a visible convex on the edge. Well, those convexes are most of the times too aggressive. They're almost round, so you won't get a really sharp knife with that. You can get a really sharp knife with sandpaper, but don't use an underground that is too soft. But yeah, people think that Scandi is the most easy grind to sharpen, while convex is the most easy grind to sharpen, because when you're sharpening on the stone, you cannot hold the angle exactly the same every time unless you really focus on that angle. But when you're just sharpening, you're gonna adjust the angle with every stroke, and that will effectively create a convex on your bevel, on your blade. This knife has a slightly convex, and that can be very sharp, but it's also quite sturdy, in my opinion. So yeah. Another thing I personally don't understand is a lot of people make knife reviews on YouTube and stuff, but they haven't even sharpened the factory bevel. So they start making the review, and I look at the knife in the video, and it still has that factory bevel on it that hasn't been sharpened. And in my opinion, you cannot review a knife with a factory bevel, because the factory will give the knife a quick, kind of sharp bevel, but they do it really quick, so they can make a lot of knives. So you cannot see the true performance of a knife before you have sharpened it yourself, in my opinion. So that's that's something I find pretty strange in this knife world. A lot of people just making pretty good reviews even, but yeah, still with the factory bevel on it, and I think that's kind of strange. What more to say about this knife? Oh yeah, the edge sharpness. We have a lot of ways of telling how sharp the knife is. You can say it's paper cutting sharp. It can cut paper. But yeah, cutting paper is not really that special, but it can be special. So how sharp is paper cutting sharp? But a better example is hair popping sharp. There are a lot of different opinions about hair popping sharp. My personal opinion is hair popping sharp is when you shave your arm. You can really see and hear the hairs popping away. For me that's hair popping sharp, but for some people hair popping sharp is when you can actually pop a hair or break a hair on the apex of the blade. And the same goes for razor sharp. I mean, what is razor sharp? I can achieve a shaving, barely shaving edge with a 400 gritstone, but yeah, that's not razor sharp. That might be shaving sharp, but not razor sharp, I think. So for me, razor sharp is when you can shave off hairs without any resistance. But yeah, it's very, very fake, very unclear what people mean with razor sharp. So there aren't any facts in this knife terminology, or this part of knife terminology. I think there are some professional measurements on edge sharpness. I think they measure that with a thread that is under pressure and that is pushed against the bevel, and then it breaks under a certain amount of strength, and with that you can measure the actual edge sharpness. But yeah, it's really hard to see that by eye. So yeah, that's a very fake thing, and I wish we had more facts in knife terminology, more facts in just in the knife world. I have I'll put a link in this video to a video that I've made about edge sharpness, testing edge sharpness. And yeah, that is my opinion about these different terms of edge sharpness. But overall, yeah, it's pretty fake. Not fake, but vague. Another common discussion is what is a survival blade, what is a bushcraft blade. There aren't any facts about these things. There isn't a fact that a knife is a survival blade if it has this and that. And a knife, the same goes for bushcraft. In my opinion, there should be some things that distinct a bushcraft knife from a survival knife. And in my opinion, I will tell you what I think a survival knife is and a bushcraft knife is. So yeah, for me, a bushcraft knife, it can be a survival knife. A survival knife can be a bushcraft knife, but a bushcraft knife is not per se a survival knife. I think a lot of people say a bushcraft knife has a Scandi edge, a true Scandi. I don't personally. I think that's partially true because a bushcraft knife has to be good at carving, and Scandi edge is the edge to carve with. But personally, I like Scandi Vex a lot for my bushcraft because I mainly do a lot of survival tasks while bushcrafting, like batoning and feather sticking, and you don't really need a Scandi bevel for that. So I really like Scandi Vex or a small convex on my blades. But for me, a survival knife is a carefree knife that you can use without hesitation, not fearing it will break, and yeah, doesn't need any attention for care. Like, it should be rust resistant in my opinion, because when I'm surviving, I don't want to be busy with keeping my knife clean. That's not the purpose of surviving. So that's why I had some problems with, let's say, Essie saying their knives are survival knives. I mean, what is a survival knife? If I'm not going to take a heavily coated Essie that can rust very fast into the rainforest, or yeah, I'm not going to take that knife. I would rather take a rust-free Mora instead. But if you're saying Essie is a urban survival knife, or yeah, that might be true, but in my opinion, a survival knife is a, first of all, full tang blade. It doesn't need any attention. So I think Volknevens are survival knives, and I think a Mora and stuff, or a Helle, or more Bushcraft knives. But I think every survival knife can be used in Bushcraft. But I don't think every Bushcraft knife can be used in survival. So yeah. And some people will say that a survival knife is the knife you have with you when you're surviving. But I don't really agree with that, because a knife can become a survival knife because you have to survive with it. But if you're going to sell a knife, selling it as a survival knife, it should have some specifications, in my opinion. Like full tang, rust resistance, and maybe it might be important to be able to scrape a fire steel or something. So yeah, maybe a certain length should be the minimum for a survival knife. I mean, you want a survival knife to be very versatile. Let's say with a rust-free Victorinox, the small ones which only have a blade and a saw or something, you can't really do a lot with it. You can do a lot with it, but not the things you would want to do with a survival knife. I think a survival knife should be able to be powerful enough to chop, to split, but it's also still light enough to carry around for long term, and be able to craft a little bit, like 10 pegs and stuff. Yeah. So yeah, it should be a very versatile knife. And another thing is things like a mirror polish. I mean, what is a mirror polish? This can be a mirror polish. I think this is a mirror polish, but as you can see, it still is a little bit fake. So maybe it's not a mirror polish for you. For me, this is also a mirror polish, but it has visible scratches on the surface. So you might not agree with this being a mirror polish. So perhaps what I call a mirror polish is not a mirror polish for you. So that those things can be hard to communicate, because there are different opinions of and there are not certain standards that are followed to call something a mirror polish, or call something a survival knife, or yeah, or call something razor sharp. There are not certain standards for those. So that's a pretty hard thing in this knife world, in my opinion. There aren't any facts. There are some facts, of course, but I think there are quite a lot of facts missing in the knife world. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching.